Hello, everyone. Today I'm here with Congressman Langevin. Congressman, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you, Emmanuel.
So before we get into our questions, targeted towards celebrating Developmental Disability Awareness Month, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Jim Langevin, and I'm the congressman from the 2nd Congressional District in Rhode Island. I've had the privilege of representing Rhode Island in Congress now for the last 11 terms. I'm in my 11th term, so the 22nd year of my service in Congress. I don't know where the time has gone, but it really has been the honor and the privilege of my lifetime to hold this position and be the voice and the vote of the people of Rhode Island now in the 2nd District for, again, 22 years. I'm a senior member of the House Armed Services Committee. And on that committee, I chair the subcommittee on cyber, innovative technologies, and information systems. And I also am a senior member of the Homeland Security Committee. Beyond that, though, I have a strong interest in disabilities issues, and I actually co-founded, I still co-chair the Disabilities Caucus in the Congress. There's many caucuses in Congress, and basically it's a group of like-minded members who want to be proactive on a particular topic, and we collaborate together and join caucuses so that we can educate our colleagues, members, and staff about important issues. So in this case, Bipartisan Disabilities Caucus focuses on disabilities issues across a whole spectrum of issues. I also co-founded and co-chair the Career and Technical Education Caucus, which is another area of interest of mine. I come from the city of Warwick, Rhode Island. I'm born and raised in Rhode Island, and this is I love calling Rhode Island home.
Wow. You said you don't know where the time went, but I say time flies when you're having fun, and it sounds like you're having fun making some real change. So I appreciate the work that you have done. Said it before, but I'll say it again on camera. Thank you for the work that you have done. So I'm gonna just briefly ask you a couple questions here. The first question is in regards to employment. Employment is a concern for people with disabilities. Can you tell me what can Congress do to ensure that people with disabilities get the jobs that they deserve and want?
Sure. Thanks for the question. And I want to begin by saying happy Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month. It's important that we're highlighting these important.
So I'm gonna just briefly ask you a couple questions here. The first question is in regards to employment. Employment is a concern for people with disabilities. Can you tell me what can Congress do to ensure that people with disabilities get the jobs that they deserve and want?
Sure. Thanks for the question. And I want to begin by saying happy Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month. It's important that we're highlighting these important issues. So I'm glad we're having this conversation today. But on your question about how we can ensure that people with disabilities are getting the jobs that they want, I'll start off by saying that, participation in the workforce can be a very rewarding part of community living in so many ways for many people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. But I have to say that it's an unfortunate reality that many people with disabilities can't access meaningful jobs because of insufficient supports and quite frankly, discrimination that still exists. So Congress needs to start by, I believe, identifying and correcting deficiencies and anti-discrimination labor laws. This will really ensure that the legal rights of people with disabilities are soundly protected in statute. So really important point to make there, and really important focus area. At the same time, I believe that Congress needs to provide strong funding for the programs that help people with disabilities prepare for careers, like the Youth Transition Services program. So these programs help young people with disabilities across career and technical education as they transition from youth to adulthood. So again, great support network and program. And I've always been a big proponent of career and technical education, or CTE. As I mentioned, I'm the co-chair of the Career and Technical Education Caucus of the Congress. But basically, preparing for a career is only half the battle for people with disabilities. Many workers with disabilities need various supports and accommodations to remain viable in the workforce. Just by way of example, things like access to healthcare and home and community-based services, things like accessible housing and accessible transportation, which is another big one. I often say that it doesn't do anyone any good to get the job if you can't get to the job. So we need to make sure that that accessible transportation options actually work for people with disabilities. So I believe that Congress actually has to make sure that these programs are consistently available and supported.
Wow, thank you for such a great response. And you touched on so many different things there. Speaking of getting to the job and doing the job, what can Congress do to make sure that people with disabilities that are doing the same work, showing up at the same jobs, what can Congress do to ensure that some minimum wage is a thing of the past?
Yeah, you raise a really important topic and very important issue. This whole thing of integrated employment and equal pay for equal work, being able to earn a decent living. You've already touched on a topic that many people don't realize, that Section 14C of the Fair Labor Standards Act actually allows some employers to compensate workers with disabilities at lower rates than the federal minimum wage, which is right now $7.25 an hour, which even that is too low, quite frankly. We talk about all this, this focus on trying to up the minimum wage to get it to be closer to or exceed $15 an hour, and yet we talk about the federal minimum wage, we're still talking that $7.25 an hour, which is too low. So Congress can fix this, and broadly speaking, we need to do two things in tandem to do it right. First of all, we have to phase out Section 14C, which I'm very supportive of. This will put an end to subminimum wages so that all workers with disabilities are compensated fairly for their hard work. However, an equally important part of this process is making sure that people with disabilities who currently earn subminimum wages have the resources that they need to access competitive integrated employment. So fortunately, Congress right now is already working on both sides of these efforts. I'm proud to be championing them and supporting them. So for things like looking at the Raise the Wage Act, which most people recognize as the bill to increase the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, that would also phase out Section 14C to end the subminimum wage for people with disabilities. I think it's a step really in the right direction. This bill passed the House during the 116th Congress, and currently more than 200 co-sponsors. The bill has more than 200 co-sponsors in the 117th Congress that we're in right now. I'll also mention that Chairman Bobby Scott is of the Education Workforce Committee. His bill, the Transformation to Competitive Integrated Employment Act, would also phase out Section 14C while providing resources to employers, states, and other agencies to make sure that they can create competitive integrated employment for people with disabilities. So I'm pleased to say that the Build Back Better Act, that's the legislation that's championed by President Biden, included a competitive integrated employment transformation grant program, which is modeled on Chairman Bobby Scott's bill. And I'm hopeful that we can get this provision over the finish line, hopefully this Congress.
Wow. I can literally sit here all day and listen to what you have to say. Such great detailed answers, and you touched again on so many topics. Even though we're talking about employment, employment kind of leads everything. So my next question is more about home and community based services. Why is community living important for people with disabilities?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I love the focus on home and community-based services. Look, we all want to live independent, normal lives in our community, where we were born and raised, and being a part of that. And just in, you talk about, why is community living, important for people? Well, in many ways, I think that you and I probably answered the question in part that you raised already, that community living, again, is just so important because it allows people with disabilities to live fuller, more independent lives. In fact, it gives many people with disabilities the opportunity to participate in society and work a fulfilling job, taking charge of their own life decisions, right? And it's, that's why it's no surprise that most people prefer community living over an institutional setting. I think given, all things being equal, everyone would rather have, independent community living in their own community where they're comfortable. And we can't forget that the benefit of community living, I think, runs in both directions. Communities benefit from the diverse voices and perspectives of people with disabilities, and people with disabilities are then, they're shopping at local shops, they're eating local restaurants, they're at the local coffee shop buying their morning coffee, let's say. And again, that's what the big thing, the most important thing that all businesses need. They need customers, right? Well, people with disabilities do have money to spend too, and we want to be able to make sure that they're earning a decent wage and can participate fully, living in the communities and making a community what it is. The communities are diverse, made up of diverse populations, and we can't leave people with disabilities out, because that means that there's a void in the community that we're not being part of. So we need to change that.
Wow, wow. You talking about just the benefits of living in the community, and that's so valuable on so many different levels. Even someone's account to be social, to be around people, to be able to feel like they belong. So thank you for such a detailed response. Uh, and continuing on, what can Congress do to ensure that people with disabilities don't lose the freedom to live in the community and to be a part of that benefit that you talked about so well?
Yeah. Well, thankfully, I'll point to the Supreme Court's Olmstead decision, because they got it right. This is one time the Supreme Court really got it right. And it says, all people with disabilities should have the opportunity to receive community-based care. Wherever possible, community living should be the default, basically. That is what should be the ultimate goal that we need to achieve. And I believe that Congress's responsibility to bolster the programs and supports that make this possible, it really needs to be our focus. That's why I'm so proud to lead the annual appropriations letter for the programs that are authorized under the Developmental Disabilities Act. Each year, we push for strong funding for university centers of excellence, by way of example, DD councils, projects of national significance, and protection and advocacy systems for individuals with developmental disabilities. Proud to lead those letters, that letter every year to support those programs. And another critical support that helps people with disabilities live independent lives is Medicaid home and community-based services, or HCBS for short. But HCBS is far from perfect. I think we recognize that, and mainly due to state imposed caps, If a state doesn't have an adequate Medicaid support program generous enough, then then not all the needs are being met. In fact, more than 800,000 Americans, as I understand it, remain on HCBS waiting lists right now. 800,000, way too big. We need to fix this, and we can, I believe, by boosting funding and expanding access to Medicaid, home and community-based services. So I'm pleased to say that that President Biden pledged his support for this expansion through the American Jobs Plan, and I was proud to vote for it in November as part of the Build Back Better Act. When I was with President Biden in the Oval Office, right on the celebrating the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, recently, I had a chance to thank him for such a strong focus of building up our healthcare infrastructure, which is going to directly benefit people with disabilities. Things like this program that expanding and supporting Medicaid, home and community-based services. So now we just need to push to retain this in whatever bill comes out of the Senate, so that more people with disabilities can live in the setting of their choice.
So knowing that you represent a million, over a million,
Half a million people. Yep.
I feel even more fortunate that I was able to sit down and have a conversation with you today. So again, thank you for taking the time out to be here. Are there any final words of wisdom that you would like to share with the audience that may be looking at this recording?
Sure. Well, I would say that, we're still dealing with COVID. And so I just encourage everyone to be safe. We're still not out of this pandemic. As has been said, we may be done with the pandemic, but the pandemic is not done with us. So everyone needs to be safe. I hope everyone's getting vaccinated. I hope everyone is getting boosted. Wear your mask, practice social distancing so that we can get through this right now. But I know the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted many of the systems and that support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So it's also, it's also thrown new unanticipated challenge into the mix. Fortunately, the DD Act programs have worked over time to adapt to the condition of the pandemic and make sure that the needs for people with disabilities, intellectual and developmental disabilities continue to be met. These programs have launched into virtual platforms that help lift up people and voices and needs of the community. So we need to make sure that we keep a focus on this, keeping people healthy. These programs, I know, have persevered through the pandemic to continue their mission of advocating for the rights of people with developmental disabilities, and I applaud their efforts to persevere.
As a very fortunate staff member of one of those DD councils, thank you for saying that, and thank you for the work that you have done.
Very good.